The desert night does not arrive all at once. It gathers slowly, first with the lengthening of shadows along the scrub and stone, then with the cooling of the air as the sun's heat draws back into the earth. By the time the sky deepens into its quiet indigo, the outpost lamps have already been lit, their glass panes warm with a steady golden glow. This is one of the smaller ranger stations, no more than 3 rooms, a short watchtower, and a fenced corral for 2 pack animals. Its boards are sun-bleached, and the tin roof holds the faint scent of past rain, though none has fallen in weeks. In the watchroom, a man in a faded coat moves through his evening routine, with a quiet precision that comes from years of practice. He begins with the lanterns, turning the small brass knob to raise the wick, adding a measured pour of clean oil, and setting each in its appointed place. One at the entryway, another at the far edge of the corral, a third at the base of the watchtower ladder. The light they give is not strong, but it is steady, and steady light is what matters most here. Next comes the radio, a square-faced unit with a leather handle and a dial that resists turning in the cooler air. He eases it gently from its shelf and tests the line. A faint crackle, a low hum, then silence. The signal is not always clear this far out, but tonight he catches a soft voice. Another ranger, 3 days' ride away, giving the evening weather report. The watchman notes it in a small ledger. Clear skies, wind from the west, cold after midnight. On the wall above the desk hangs a map, its parchment corners reinforced with tape. Faint pencil lines show the main routes through this region, and smaller notations, circles, crosses, tiny stars, mark wells, old buildings, and landmarks known mostly to the rangers. One star, faded almost to invisibility, rests at the southern edge of the chart. The watchman's eyes linger on it for a moment, as though recalling something not spoken of often before returning to his work. He moves to the small storeroom where shelves hold neatly arranged supplies, sealed jars of preserved fruit, bundles of dried herbs for tea, coiled lengths of rope, and tins of oil for the lanterns. He counts them slowly, marking each number in his ledger. Nothing here is in abundance, yet nothing is in short supply either. Balance is the quiet craft of this place. Outside, the desert is breathing in its night air. The wind moves softly over the dry grass and whispers along the weathered posts of the fence. The animals shift in the corral, their ears flicking toward distant sounds, none of them urgent. Overhead, the first of the stars have come forward in the darkening sky, pale at first, then gathering brightness as the last of the sunset fades. The watchman ascends the tower. Its ladder creaks faintly under his weight, and from the top platform he can see far across the open land. To the north, the faint outline of hills is barely visible against the sky. To the west, the last blush of dusk is giving way to night, and far to the east, so far that it could be mistaken for a star low on the horizon, he sees the light of another outpost's lantern. It is a small thing, that light, but it carries a certain weight. Somewhere out there, another ranger is tending to their own evening routine, adjusting wicks, marking ledgers, keeping watch as the desert settles. The knowledge that others are out there, connected by these points of light, has always been part of the ranger's strength. Back inside, he makes tea from the dried herbs, a mix of sage and chamomile that softens the dry air in his throat. Steam curls upward, carrying a faint, earthy scent. He takes his time with it, watching the way the lamplight rests on the table, the way the shadows shift as the wick flickers. On the desk beside the map lies a notebook, its cover worn smooth with years of handling. Inside are brief notes from past weeks, weather, sightings of traders, maintenance on the fence. the occasional mention of travelers seeking direction. A line written months ago reads, "Star mark on southern edge." No change. Nothing more. No explanation. When the tea is finished, he cleans the mug, wipes the table, and lowers the lantern wicks to conserve oil. The watchroom settles into a quieter light, just enough to see by. He sits near the window, listening to the sounds outside. The low shuffle of the animals, the faint tick of the cooling stove, and carried on the wind, a suggestion of music from somewhere too distant to place. The night deepens. A moth flutters near the lantern, settles on the glass, and rests there. The watchman notes the time in his ledger and leans back, letting the hours pass in their unhurried way. His thoughts drift, not toward sleep, but toward the quiet satisfaction of knowing the outpost is in order, its duties seen to, its presence steady. Beyond the window, that distant lantern in the east still holds its place. It is not brighter nor closer, but somehow it feels a little more present now, as though acknowledging the gaze turned toward it. The watchman imagines the other ranger doing the same, each keeping their post, each part of a network stretched across the desert's breadth. Before dawn, he will send a brief message on the radio. Nothing urgent, just a confirmation that all is well. For now, he lets the night be what it is, calm, unbroken, and wide enough to hold its own stories. And somewhere in that wide stillness lies the beginning of those stories, the first steps, the first gathering of people who would one day call themselves desert rangers. Those origins wait in the background, like the faint outlines of distant hills, ready to be walked toward when the telling begins again. In the hours before dawn, the desert's silence is complete. Only when the first thin light brushes against the horizon do the outlines of the land begin to return. The long ridges, the scattered mesquite, the pale ribbon of a dry wash cutting through the plain. It was in such landscapes, long before this particular outpost was built, that the first rangers began their work. There was no formal charter then, no oaths or ranks, only a small handful of people who had chosen to live between the scattered settlements, walking the long distances where few others cared to go. They were not all alike. Some had been part of old-world law enforcement, carrying forward a habit of recording events with precision. Others were wanderers whose lives had already been shaped by the desert's quiet demands. A few came from the settlements themselves, young men and women who had grown up watching the horizon and wondering what lay beyond. The early days were simple in their tools. A good pair of boots, patched more times than counted. A canteen, its metal scuffed but dependable. A rifle kept clean not for constant use, but for the rare times it was necessary to warn away danger. More important than any weapon was knowledge, how to find water in dry country, how to read the wind, how to understand the patterns of travel left in the sand. When they met along the trails, these early rangers would exchange not just news, but careful notes about the land. Which wells were still good, which trails were blocked by rockfall where storms had swept away the markers. They began to draw maps, marking them not for personal gain, but for the use of anyone who might need them. One such map still survives in the Central Archive today. Its paper is brittle, its lines faint, but its shape is unmistakable. A web of roots stretching across hundreds of miles. Near the bottom corner, drawn with a different hand, is a small star, the same as the one on the watchman's map in the outpost from our first chapter. That star is not explained in the old notes. It is mentioned in passing, marked point south, no settlement present. No details follow. The handwriting changes after that entry, as though someone else took over the record. By the second decade of their existence, the Rangers had begun to be recognized by the settlements. Their presence was not common, but it was understood. When one arrived, people knew it meant the land was being watched, and that trouble, if it came, would not go unseen for long. In return, the Rangers asked for very little: water when needed, a safe place to sleep, the occasional shared meal. Stories from those years speak of them repairing wells, guiding lost travelers, even planting windbreaks of hardy shrubs near villages to keep the dust down. They did these things quietly, often without announcing who had done them. In the evenings, they would camp under the open sky, sometimes alone, sometimes with another ranger met by chance. Around their small fires, they spoke of the distances yet unwalked, of canyons they had only glimpsed from above, of strange markers found in places that maps did not name. It was during one such meeting, recorded in a faded journal, that the idea of regular patrols began to take shape. Not just wandering, but a planned rhythm, routes that would be walked again and again, building familiarity with the land until even its smallest changes could be noticed. The journal's cover is worn, and its pages smell faintly of dust and old leather. On one page, the words are short and plain. First patrol leaves tomorrow. West Canyon route. Beneath it, in smaller script, weather steady. Lanterns ready. This habit of preparation, of having lanterns trimmed and oil measured before setting out, remains part of ranger work today. It is a small thing, but like many small things, it speaks to a way of thinking. That readiness is not about expecting trouble, but about ensuring the journey is as smooth as it can be. As the sun rises higher, casting long golden light across the plain, we leave these early days knowing that their quiet principles have shaped everything that came after. In the watchroom of our present-day outpost, the man in the faded coat folds the old map with care, placing it back into the drawer. Outside, the lantern at the tower's top has been extinguished for the day. Yet in the east, faint even in the sunlight, the other outpost's lantern glimmers still, either a trick of the light or a signal not yet ended. It is toward the space between such points of light that the Rangers' patrols will carry us next. The measured steps, the practiced eyes, and the work of tending the land will unfold as the story moves into its next chapter. The desert night in New Mexico is a strange kind of silence, not empty, not void, but filled with the slow breath of the earth, the soft hiss of wind over ancient dunes, the creak of sun-bleached wood, the faint clicking of cooling stones after the heat of the day. It was in such a night that the whispers began. The Withers family had settled back into their small adobe home after the 13th reburial, trying, as they had many times before, to pretend that life might return to normal. But the land remembered. And sometimes, the land does not forgive. Ellen Withers, the youngest surviving sister, awoke first. She was no stranger to the shifting sighs of the desert, coyotes yipping in the distance, the muted roll of thunder far to the south. But this was different. It sounded like words. Not clear, not in any tongue she knew, but low, drawn-out murmurs, as though the sand itself was gossiping to the moon. She pressed her ear to the cool clay wall, but the sound wasn't outside. It was beneath her, under the floor, under the earth. She woke her mother, but Mrs. Withers, worn thin by years of tragedy, told her it was the wind or the trick of a restless mind. Still, she lit a small oil lamp, and together they paced the narrow room, pressing their palms to the floorboards. The murmurs rose and fell, sometimes closer, sometimes farther, as if pacing too. keeping time with their movements. By morning, the Jia whispers had gone. The day passed without incident, but that night they returned, stronger, and this time more than one voice. Henry Withers, the eldest son, insisted on digging. "If it's an animal," he said, "we'll flush it out. If it's nothing, then we'll put this to rest." So they dug. The desert floor was loose and dry at first, crumbling under the shovel's edge, but after 2 feet, the sand grew heavier, clumping as if damp. And then, at 3 feet, the first hollow sound, the unmistakable thud of wood struck by steel. A box, small, weathered, and bound in rusted nails. Mrs. Withers froze. It was not one of theirs. When Henry pried it open, the air that escaped was stale and cold, impossibly cold for a summer night. Inside lay an assortment of trinkets: a child's leather shoe, a braid of pale hair tied with ribbon, a small tin bell without its clapper, and a folded scrap of paper so brittle it crumbled at the edges. The writing was faint, smudged by years of burial, but one word was still legible: return. They buried the box again before sunrise, but they did not bury the sound. That night, the whispers became a chant, slow, repetitive, insistent. The desert itself seemed to hum with it, carrying the voices through the beams of the house, through the bedposts, through the bones of the living. And in the silence between those chants, Ellen swore she heard the sound of small, dry hands brushing against the underside of the floorboards. The desert night carries stories, if you know how to listen, not in words shouted or hurried, but in whispers, in the gentle creak of a windswept signpost, in the rhythm of shifting sands. In places like this, messages are woven into the quiet fabric of the world. At a small ranger outpost, the radio rests on a worn wooden shelf, its knob smoothed by years of careful handling. A ranger lifts it gently and turns the dial, coaxing the receiver into life. There is a moment of static, the low hiss of white noise filling the room. Then, like a breath, a voice emerges. Soft, deliberate, familiar. "Echo Base, this is Delta Station. Evening report. Clear skies, wind steady from the west. All secure." The words flow slowly, each one measured and calm. The 2 men listening do not respond immediately. Instead, one nods toward a small lamp, its flame steady against the low hum of the generator. It is a ritual, a signal of presence, a comfort to those who know the language of lantern light and quiet voices. Later, a courier mounts a horse outside the outpost, a canvas satchel tied securely across the saddle. The animal shifts, stamping its hooves softly into the dust. The rider checks the map pinned inside a leather cover, routes marked not just with lines, but with small symbols denoting water, shelter, and sometimes subtle warnings. Along the path, the courier passes markers familiar to those who have traveled this way many times before. A stone balanced precariously on a yodse ledge, a cluster of wind-bent shrubs, the pattern of a hoofprint overlapping another in the soft soil. Each sign is a word in a sentence in a conversation held between those who protect this land and those who call it home. Back in the outpost, the ranger who had spoken on the radio sets down the receiver and walks to a small shelf where several metal plates rest. They are flat, unadorned pieces of old alloy, their surfaces etched with worn symbols. One of these plates had been found earlier near a dry riverbed, half buried in sand. It had been pocketed quietly, set aside for later study. Tonight, it lies near a small lamp, its edges catching the flicker of light. The markings are not immediately clear, but there is a rhythm to them, lines intersecting at angles, shapes repeating in subtle sequences. The ranger traces a finger lightly over one pattern, as if seeking a memory buried in metal. Outside, the desert breathes under the vast sky. A breeze stirs, carrying with it the faint scent of creosote and cooled earth. The stars blink patiently overhead, distant fires burning in the quiet dark. The outpost settles into its night stillness, the rhythm of watchfulness unbroken. The courier rides steadily toward another settlement, where the markers on their map will guide them to a quiet cluster of adobe homes gathered around a deep well. This small community has long been under the ranger's care, not through force, but through the steady presence of help when needed, and the promise of aid without interference. In the coming days, the contents of the courier's satchel will be unpacked carefully. Letters, maps, and small parcels meant to connect outposts across the desert's breadth. Within those letters may be clues, not just to weather or patrol schedules, but to a pattern that has quietly begun to emerge, one waiting to be noticed by patient eyes. And so the story moves forward, carried on the wind, written in sand, held in light. Tomorrow, the ranger's path will take us closer to those settlements, to the people living under the watchful eyes of the desert rangers. The quiet work of connection and care continues there, where every gesture counts and every listening ear matters. Under the vast New Mexico sky, small settlements cluster like quiet islands amid the wide desert sea. Each community holds its own rhythm, soft footfalls on packed earth, the distant bleat of goats, the muted conversations carried beneath awnings against the afternoon sun. The desert rangers move among these settlements as gentle presences, never imposing but always observant. Their role is less of rulers and more of stewards, tending to needs both spoken and unspoken, with steady hands and patient eyes. One such settlement rests around a deep well, its stone walls darkened by years of water and shadow. Adobe homes circle it, their thick walls holding in the day's warmth and releasing it slowly after sunset. Children play near the edges, their laughter low and curious, while elders sit beneath a ramada, sharing stories woven with dust and memory. A ranger arrives quietly, her boots stirring little dust as she moves along the narrow paths. She carries with her a small kit, tools for mending, a leather-bound notebook, and a pouch of dried herbs for tea. Her presence is familiar here. She is greeted with nods and quiet smiles, the kind reserved for neighbors who come with care, not command. Today, she repairs a broken fence post near the settlement's edge. The wood is dry and cracked, but with careful, steady hands, she straightens it and secures it anew, easing the tension in the wire. It is a small task, but one that makes a difference. A quiet boundary, keeping herds from wandering into cultivated patches. Later, she visits the well, testing the water with practiced fingers, noting its clarity and flow. She dips a leather cup and offers it to a child nearby, who drinks gratefully before returning to play. The ranger jots a note. Well steady, no signs of contamination. Water good through next month. At a shaded table beneath the ramada, she joins elders who speak in measured tones about the seasons, the rain, and the shifting trails that connect their home to others. They speak softly of the rangers, keepers of paths, mediators in disputes, hands that mend without asking for praise. One elder points toward the southern horizon, where a faded star once marked an empty space on an old map. We call it the Dry Crossing, he says, voice low and even. Used to be a place where water ran long before the world changed. The ranger listens, aware that this small detail ties quietly back to the metal plates she has seen in the outpost archives, pieces of a puzzle not yet fully understood. She asks no questions, knowing that some stories unfold in their own time. As the sun lowers, casting soft shadows through mesquite branches, she accepts a jar of preserved fruit from a grateful family. Its sweetness is a reminder of care given and received, a bond that strengthens in silence and small acts. The day ends with the settlement settling into twilight. Lanterns are lit in windows, the warm glow mingling with the last light of day. The ranger mounts her horse, the familiar weight of her pack resting against the saddle. She pauses at the edge of town, looking back at the circle of homes, the well, the scattered children still at play. Her path leads onward, toward the unspoken challenges that lie beyond. Challenges that require not just tools and maps, but patience, respect, and quiet understanding. In the next chapter, we will listen to the oath the rangers hold, not in words, but in the steady rhythm of their care beneath the open desert sky. Beneath the wide and patient sky, the desert rangers carry a quiet promise, not spoken aloud in grand halls or formal ceremonies, but lived in small gestures, steadiness in the face of solitude, kindness in the midst of hardship, and a watchful eye turned always toward the land and its people. The oath is older than any written record. It is a rhythm felt in the slow dawn light, in the steady beat of boots on cracked earth, in the patient tending of wounds, fences, and wells. It is a bond shared not just between rangers, but between them and the desert itself, a trust quietly renewed with every step taken beneath the sun and stars. At a remote camp, a ranger prepares for the night. She lays her gear carefully on a canvas tarp, a water canteen, a leather-bound journal, a small tin of herbs for tea. Each item is placed with intention, the act itself a form of meditation, a way to steady the mind before the long hours of darkness. She kneels beside a fire pit, arranging small twigs and dried brush in a neat pile. The first spark catches easily, the flames climbing slowly, casting flickering shadows on the surrounding rocks. The fire's warmth reaches her face, soft and constant, a companion in the vast stillness. Taking her journal, she traces the outline of the land she has traveled that day. The curves of the canyon walls, the spread of creosote bushes, the faint line where the desert meets the sky. She writes not just what she sees, but what she feels. The hum of the wind, the scent of dry earth after a rare rain, the quiet footsteps of animals unseen. Her pen pauses over a blank page. Here, she writes the words that need no voice, an oath made not to others, but to herself and the land she guards. It is simple, to observe without haste, to protect without force, to listen before speaking. The desert night deepens. Above, the stars emerge slowly, first a few faint points, then a scattering, then a dense tapestry that stretches endlessly overhead. The ranger leans back against a rock, the fire's glow soft against her skin. She breathes in the cool air, steady and slow, feeling the weight of solitude, not as loneliness, but as a sacred space. In the distance, the faint flicker of a lantern light marks another outpost, a gentle reminder that she is part of a greater whole. Though separated by miles of barren land, the rangers are connected by this shared promise, an unspoken oath carried in the rhythm of their footsteps and the light they tend. As the night unfolds, the ranger takes a sip of warm tea, its herbal scent mingling with the smoke. She listens to the desert's sounds, the rustle of night creatures, the whisper of wind through sparse branches, the occasional crack of dry wood settling. Each sound is a note in a quiet symphony that has played long before and will continue long after. Before closing her journal, she writes one final line. The desert does not forget. Tomorrow she will rise with the dawn, ready to walk the familiar trails again. Her oath will be renewed, not by words spoken, but by the steady acts of care that give shape to the ranger's enduring presence. And as the stars fade with the coming light, a new day will begin, one that will carry the story forward toward discoveries both gentle and profound. Morning light spills softly over the desert horizon, touching the cracked earth with a gentle warmth that has no hurry. In this slow arrival of day, the world seems to hold its breath, waiting, watching, steady. The ranger moves quietly through the pale dust, her boots leaving faint impressions that the wind will soon smooth away. She carries a small notebook and a finely sharpened pencil, tools as familiar as the worn leather of her pack. Today, her task is to follow a trail, one that has been seen before, but whose meaning is not yet clear. The tracks are faint, mere whispers pressed into sand and stone, telling stories only patient eyes can read. She kneels beside a broken twig, noting the precise angle where it snapped. Nearby, a cluster of footprints, some human, some animal, overlap in a complex dance of movement and time. There is a rhythm here, a pattern just beneath the surface, waiting to be understood. Her fingers trace a line through the dust, gathering fragments of broken leaves and small stones. Each fragment is a word in a language of signs, a language shaped by wind and motion, by chance and intent. As she walks, the desert offers its quiet clues. A scuffed patch of soil where a pack animal may have rested, the faint imprint of a wheel track pressed deep where the earth is soft, the subtle shift in vegetation where water once lingered longer than usual. She pauses often, inhaling the dry air scented faintly with creosote and sun-warmed sage. Each breath is a reminder of the land's steady patience, its ability to hold and release stories without rush or demand. The notebook fills slowly, sketches of footprints, notes on soil texture, descriptions of light and shadow. Each entry is a careful record, not just of what is seen, but of what might be. At the edge of a dry wash, she stops to examine a small cairn, a pile of stones balanced carefully, perhaps by someone who passed this way before. The stones catch the sunlight, casting soft shadows that move gently as the wind shifts. She touches one stone lightly, sensing the quiet intent behind its placement. It is not a warning, nor a call for help, but a message of presence, a mark left by a traveler who wished to be remembered, or to remember themselves. The day unfolds in this way, a rhythm of steps and observation, of note-taking and quiet reflection. There is no urgency, no rush to conclusions. Instead, there is space. Space for questions to form, for patterns to emerge slowly, like the unfolding petals of a desert flower. As the sun climbs higher, the shadows shorten and the dust grows warmer. The ranger pauses beneath a lone mesquite tree, its branches swaying softly in a light breeze. She sips from her canteen, the cool water a brief comfort against the desert's steady heat. In the distance, the faint glow of a lantern can be seen, marking an outpost like a steady heartbeat in the wide landscape. It is a reminder that even in this vastness, connection endures, between people, between places, between stories. As she gathers her notes and begins the slow walk back, her mind carries a quiet question, a question left unspoken, but waiting patiently to be understood. In the next chapter, the story will follow the ranger's steps as she seeks answers, moving gently between outposts and settlements, guided by the subtle signs hidden in dust and light. The afternoon sun leans low, casting long, softened shadows across the desert floor. Paths once well trodden now edged with the slow return of sagebrush and desert grass, beckon quietly. These paths are more than lines in sand. They are threads weaving the scattered places and lives of the desert together. The ranger sets out just after midday, her pack steady against her back. The map she carries is worn, its edges rounded by years of use, and marked with small notations, dots and dashes, stars and arrows, each a gentle guide to where she might find stories waiting beneath the quiet earth. Her first steps are familiar, tracing a route followed many times before. Yet today she is alert to the subtle changes, footprints fresher than expected, a bundle of discarded cloth near a dry creek bed, the faint scent of smoke curling on the breeze. She pauses often, her keen eyes scanning the landscape with quiet focus. Each detail is a piece of a larger pattern, a puzzle slowly unfolding in the hush of the desert air. Crossing a ridge, she spots a small cairn nestled among rocks, a silent marker balanced carefully by hands who wish to be seen or remembered. Such markers serve as gentle signposts in this vast land, their meaning understood by few but respected by all who pass. As the day fades toward evening, the ranger arrives at a small cluster of homes gathered around a well. The settlement is quiet, the day's work mostly done, yet there is a warmth in the air, a sense of presence and care that speaks without words. She is welcomed with nods and quiet smiles, her arrival a routine that brings comfort rather than disturbance. Here she exchanges news, shares supplies, and listens carefully to the stories of the people, stories of the land, of travels, of changes noticed in the seasons and the soil. At the center of the gathering, an elder speaks softly of the land's memory, how every footstep, every carefully placed stone, every whisper of wind carries meaning. The ranger listens, knowing that these words echo the patterns she has traced along the quiet paths. That night, beneath a sky thick with stars, the ranger sits by a small fire, the warmth seeping slowly into the cool desert air. Her thoughts turn to the journey ahead, the paths still to follow, the signs still to read. With a steady hand, she sketches new marks on her map, each one a quiet promise to return, to watch, and to care. As sleep approaches, the world holds its breath once more, the desert resting beneath its blanket of stars, the paths waiting patiently for the steps that will come again. Evening settles softly over the desert, painting the sky in muted shades of violet and rose. The air cools, carrying the faint scent of creosote and earth long warmed by the day's sun. Amid this vast quiet, a network hums gently, invisible yet vital. The desert ranger's outposts are scattered like stars across the land, connected by more than just the dusty trails that link them. They are bound by threads of communication, trust, and shared purpose, quiet lifelines that stretch unseen beneath the open sky. Tonight, at one such outpost, a radio crackles to life. A ranger lifts the receiver with practiced ease, listening to the soft voice relaying a routine report. Nothing urgent, just a steady pulse of information about weather, patrols, and the health of the land. But beneath the steady cadence lies a rhythm that only careful ears can discern. Small irregularities in the timing, slight shifts in tone, subtle signals woven into everyday words. These are the threads that tie outposts together, a secret language carried in the pauses and patterns of sound. Elsewhere, a courier prepares for a journey between outposts. Mounted on a sure-footed horse, the rider checks the map one last time. Familiar routes marked with care, each line a thread in a tapestry of connection. Along the way, the courier passes landmarks that serve as silent beacons, a weathered signpost leaning just so, a cairn nestled beneath a juniper, a wind-bent tree shaped by years of steady breeze. Each one holds meaning, a message left by those who came before. The rider's satchel holds more than letters and supplies. There are tokens, small items meant to convey trust and goodwill. A carefully wrapped bundle of dried herbs, a folded cloth embroidered with symbols known only to the rangers, a tin whistle whose notes carry across the desert's stillness. As the night deepens, the rider reaches the next outpost, where the soft glow of lanterns flickers against adobe walls. The exchange is quiet and efficient, a passing of information, a shared meal, a brief rest before the journey continues. Within these moments, the rangers maintain the delicate balance of isolation and connection, of independence and community. Their work is a tapestry woven from many small threads, each one essential, each one carefully tended. Looking up at the stars, a ranger contemplates the vast network that holds them all together, a web of light and shadow, of steps and signals, stretching endlessly beneath the desert sky. Tomorrow, new paths will be walked, new messages sent. The quiet rhythm continues, steady as the turning of the earth itself. The desert holds its memories close, wrapped in layers of sand and stone, beneath skies both ancient and endlessly wide. Here, every whisper of wind, every shift in shadow, carries echoes of those who have come before. The desert rangers know this well. Their work is not just in the present, but in tending to the traces left behind, traces of footsteps, of stories, of quiet moments preserved by time. In a small, weathered archive nestled within an outpost's adobe walls, a ranger carefully unrolls a brittle map. Its edges are worn, the paper faintly yellowed with age. The lines are faded, but the paths remain visible, a network drawn by hands long gone, guiding travelers across a landscape both harsh and tender. Nearby, a collection of artifacts rests in simple wooden boxes, a cracked compass, a tarnished locket, a faded photograph of a family gathered beneath a mesquite tree. Each item speaks softly of lives once lived, of journeys begun and ended. The ranger traces a finger over the locket's delicate engraving, pausing to breathe in the quiet connection across time. These objects are more than relics. They are reminders that the land itself is a living archive, holding stories that shape the present and whisper to the future. Outside, the sun dips low, casting long shadows that stretch like fingers over the sand. The wind stirs gently, lifting grains that dance in the fading light. A distant coyote's call punctuates the stillness, a song as old as the desert itself. The ranger steps outside, the cool evening air brushing against skin warmed by the day's heat. She looks toward the horizon, where the outline of a forgotten ruin stands silhouetted against the fading sky. That ruin, once a place of life and laughter, now rests in quiet repose, its stones bearing silent witness to time's passage. The ranger knows that within those walls lie stories yet to be uncovered, echoes waiting to be understood. As darkness settles, she prepares to set out toward the ruin at first light. The journey is not one of haste, but of careful steps and open eyes, an invitation to listen deeply to the echoes carried on the desert wind. Tonight, under a sky thick with stars, the past and present meet softly, and as sleep draws near, the land holds its breath, ready to share its stories with those who walk gently in its care. The desert night wraps the land in a velvet hush, where stars sprinkle the sky like scattered seeds of light. In this vast quiet, the desert rangers stand watch, silent, steady, unseen. Their presence is a gentle thread, woven through the fabric of the land, a promise made not in words, but in acts of care. They are the quiet guardians, keepers of paths, mediators of trust, tenders of the delicate balance between people and place. At an outpost nestled among weathered rock formations, a ranger moves with calm purpose. Her steps fall softly on the worn stone, each one measured and deliberate. She carries a small satchel filled with tools, not weapons, but instruments of repair and healing. Sewing needles, splints carved from wood, herbal poultices. Tonight's watch is a vigil of attentiveness, not alarm. She checks the fences that guard the livestock, their wires taut and secure, the wooden posts sturdy against the desert wind. She inspects water stores, ensuring that purity is preserved and that no harm can come from neglect. In the quiet moments, she listens to the soft rustle of mesquite leaves, to the distant call of night birds, to the gentle hum of the desert itself. This listening is a form of knowing, a way to sense what cannot be seen. Elsewhere, another ranger tends to a wounded animal, a coyote caught in a thicket. With steady hands and gentle touch, she frees the creature, cleans its wounds, and wraps its leg with strips of cloth torn from an old shirt. The animal's eyes hold a wary intelligence as it is released back into the night, a small life restored by careful hands. These acts may seem small, quiet, even invisible, but they are the foundation of the ranger's work, a quiet vigilance that sustains life and trust in a land where both can be fragile. At dawn, the first light spills over the horizon, painting the desert in soft hues of rose and gold. The rangers gather briefly, sharing news and observations. There is no hurry, no loud proclamations, only the steady exchange of knowledge that will guide them through the coming day. Their bond is rooted in respect, for the land, for each other, and for those they serve. They carry their duties with humility, knowing that their strength lies not in force, but in kindness and competence. As the sun rises higher, the desert awakens to a new day, and the quiet guardians continue their watch, steady as the earth beneath their feet, enduring as the sky above. In the next chapter, we will explore the subtle shifts beginning to ripple through the desert, changes that call for careful attention and thoughtful response. The desert wind is never truly still. It moves like a slow breath, stirring dust and scent, carrying stories folded softly into its folds. Tonight, the breeze carries a subtle shift, something barely perceptible, yet unmistakable to those who listen closely. At a distant outpost, the rangers gather around a low fire, its flames casting gentle flickers against adobe walls. The air hums quietly with anticipation, not alarm, but a shared sense that the land itself is whispering a new message. A ranger traces patterns in the sand with a stick, mapping recent tracks that do not fit the familiar rhythms of animals or people known to the region. The footprints are lighter than expected, almost ghost-like, and the impressions overlap in ways that suggest care rather than haste. Elsewhere, a courier riding through the twilight notices unusual signs, small stones arranged differently, faint markings on a rock face, a feather placed atop a sun-bleached bone. Each is a quiet signal, an invitation to pay attention, to read between the lines of the desert's many voices. Back at the outpost, a radio operator listens intently to a series of coded transmissions, messages sent in a rhythm that seems at once deliberate and natural, like the measured pulse of the earth itself. The signals weave a pattern, subtle yet persistent, a call for understanding rather than action. The rangers exchange thoughts with measured words, their voices low and steady. They recognize these ripples on the desert wind not as threats, but as signs of change, Small disturbances in the familiar order, hints that the balance they tend may be shifting. There is no panic here, only a quiet readiness, a commitment to observe carefully, to respond thoughtfully, and to protect the fragile harmony of the land and its people. As night deepens, the wind carries soft sounds, whispers of old songs, the rustle of dry leaves, the gentle echo of footsteps fading into distance. These are reminders that the desert holds many layers, many voices, all woven into the ongoing story. The rangers settle in for the night, their watchful presence a steady anchor amid the shifting sands. They know that change is a part of life here, and that their role is not to stop it, but to guide it gently with respect and care. As sleep comes softly, the desert breathes beneath a sky full of stars, unchanging and ever-changing, eternal and alive. Tomorrow, the story continues, unfolding with the dawn and the quiet footsteps that follow. The morning unfolds with a hush, soft light filtering through mesquite branches, casting gentle shadows over the familiar contours of the desert floor. After days spent tracing shifting paths and reading the land's subtle messages, the ranger returns to the quiet places, those small settlements and outposts where life moves with deliberate calm and where the rhythm of care is steady and sure. Her journey leads her back to the circle of adobe homes around the deep well, where the air is fragrant with drying herbs and warm earth. Children's laughter drifts softly from a distant courtyard, mingling with the murmur of quiet conversations beneath shaded awnings. Here, the familiar faces welcome her not with fanfare, but with gentle nods and shared understanding. The bonds forged through routine visits and quiet attentiveness have grown strong, woven like the well-tended baskets and woven blankets that decorate these homes. Today, she brings small gifts, a bundle of fresh cloth, a handful of seeds gathered from distant blooms, a simple token of gratitude and connection. These offerings are exchanged without ceremony, their meaning held in the soft smiles and steady hands that receive them. As she moves through the settlement, the ranger takes time to listen, to stories of seasons past, of the rain's arrival and absence, of the slow return of life to places long dry. Each tale adds depth to the land's unfolding story, a tapestry woven from many voices and many years. At the well, she pauses to test the water, noting its clarity and flow. The familiar ritual is a comfort, a steady point in the ever-changing landscape. She makes a note in her journal, careful and precise, a quiet record of life's persistence. The day passes in gentle, edged rhythms, repairing a fence here, sharing tea there, walking slowly beneath the shade of spreading trees. The land itself seems to breathe with ease in these moments, the desert's quiet pulse steady and sure. As evening draws near, the ranger gathers with the settlement's elders beneath the ramada. Their conversation turns to the future, hopes whispered softly alongside concerns, the ever-present dance of change and continuity. In this space, the ranger's role is clear, not to command or dictate, but to walk alongside, to observe with kindness, to offer support without intrusion. As twilight deepens, lanterns are lit, their warm glow mingling with the stars' gentle light. The desert settles once more into its night song, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of night birds, the soft sigh of the wind. And as sleep approaches, the ranger feels the steady beat of connection, to the land, to the people, to the quiet places that hold the heart of the desert. The story now rests here, wrapped in calm and care, ready to be taken up again whenever the dawn calls the steps forward. The desert dawn breaks slowly, casting soft hues of peach and lavender across the endless sky. The horizon stretches wide, an open invitation to those who walk its paths with patience and care. The ranger rises early, her breath steady in the cool morning air. She prepares for the day with deliberate calm, laying out her gear, a well-worn pack, a journal filled with careful notes, and tools honed through seasons of steady use. Her journey today is one of looking forward, embracing the unknown with quiet confidence. The land ahead is vast, dotted with rocky outcrops and gentle valleys where the sun's light weaves patterns of shadow and warmth. As she walks, the sounds of the desert unfold softly. The faint rustle of sagebrush, the distant call of a hawk circling high, the gentle crunch of gravel beneath her boots. Each step is measured, a steady rhythm that echoes the patient pulse of the earth beneath. She pauses at a ridge, gazing out over the vast expanse. The world seems both immense and intimate here, endless in its reach, yet familiar in every stone and plant. The breeze carries the scent of dry earth and blooming cacti, mingling with the faint tang of distant rain. In this quiet moment, the ranger reflects on the journey so far, the paths traced, the signs read, the bonds formed between people and land. There is a deep knowing here, a gentle understanding that every step is part of a larger story, woven together by care and respect. She notes new markers along the trail, a cairn balanced with precision, a series of footprints leading toward a hidden wash, a cluster of wildflowers bending softly in the breeze. Each is a reminder that the desert is alive with stories, waiting patiently for those who listen. As the sun climbs higher, the ranger descends toward a small oasis nestled among rocks. Here, water pools quietly beneath palms and cottonwoods, a place of rest and renewal. She takes a moment to refresh, the cool water a balm against the warm air, its stillness a mirror to the calm within. The day moves gently onward, each step carrying her closer to horizons yet unseen. In embracing the vastness, the ranger carries with her a steady heart and a clear purpose: to walk with kindness, to watch with care, and to honor the quiet wisdom of the land. As evening draws near, she sets camp beneath a sky that blazes with stars. The fire crackles softly, its warmth a steady companion in the cool night air. She writes briefly in her journal, the steady scratch of pen a comforting rhythm, then settles into rest. Tomorrow will bring new paths, new signs, and the ongoing dance of discovery and care. For now, the horizon rests, wide and waiting, an open space for dreams to wander and settle softly. Night descends softly over the desert, folding the land into shadows woven with starlight. The air cools to a gentle hush, carrying with it the scent of sage and earth, whispers of a promise held quietly beneath the vast sky. The desert rangers rest beneath this canopy, their watchful eyes softened by fatigue, yet still alive with care. They are the keepers of balance, steadfast and calm, tending the fragile web of life and connection spread across this wide, patient land. Tonight, the stories carried by wind and stone settle into a gentle stillness, a soft refrain that has echoed through seasons and centuries. It is a promise made not in words, but in enduring presence, in the quiet acts of kindness and attention that give shape to hope. A ranger sits beside a small fire, the flames flickering like distant stars caught in the darkness. She opens her journal, tracing the familiar lines of maps and notes, reminders of paths traveled, signs observed, and bonds formed with the land and its people. Her pen moves slowly, writing not for record alone, but as an offering, a gentle invitation to those who will walk these sands in years to come, to listen with care, to tend with patience, and to hold the desert's promise close. Beyond the fire's warm glow, the desert breathes softly, its pulse steady and sure beneath the endless sky. The silence here is not empty, but full, filled with memory, life, and quiet possibility. As sleep draws near, the ranger leans back, eyes tracing the constellations above, patterns of light that have guided travelers long before her and will continue to do so, steadfast and true. The desert's promise is one of enduring watchfulness, a promise that even in vastness and solitude, no one truly walks alone. With this thought, the night deepens, wrapping the world in gentle calm. The stars hold their vigil, and the land rests, peaceful and waiting, ready to greet the first light of a new day. Sleep now, and know that the desert keeps its quiet promise. Steadfast, patient, and kind,